Hello, everyone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to I think it's the 5th CZ Productions podcast, but only the third one that has been made public. And I'll get into that, but welcome. It's been a while since I've done one of these. It's been about like 8 months since the last one that I did, and the last one that's uploaded on the channel, it's been even longer. If you've never seen a CZ Productions podcast, which is probably most people, it's pretty simple. It's me sitting and talking about stuff. I have topics that I set aside that I then discuss, and it is an active, sort of talk. So I am speaking, of course, but I also have an open dialogue. If people jump into the live stream, they can ask questions and stuff like that, and I will talk about it and give my thoughts on that. So, first things first, the music playing in the background for this one is, I don't believe I've used it, is the several covers of Tokyo Ghoul music. Tokyo Ghoul. It's an okay anime, but the soundtrack is really the highlight. And we're going to be doing a few things different this podcast, but we will get into that in a moment. First, let me talk about the topics. The main conversation we're going to be having is several games that I've played in the year of 2018, and finally we'll round it up with my game of the year. But the games we're going to be discussing are Dragon Ball FighterZ, Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4, God of War, Detroit Become Human, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Red Dead Redemption 2, Fallout 76, and finally my game of the year, which I will not say, but it's something I actually haven't even played on the channel. So let me first talk about the delay in content. I was planning on doing this like the very beginning of January, is when I was ideally planning to do this podcast for Game of the Year stuff in 2018, but I'm having a lot of issues with my wisdom tooth right now. Even as of right now, I am in quite agonizing pain, and it's wonderful. So that is something that on Monday here I'm gonna hopefully be getting taken care of, but I've just been pouring on copious amounts of Oragel and popping a leaf like crazy to try and deal with it, but in a lot of pain. Also, at the beginning of January, waifu, my girlfriend, Charisse, I just call her waifu because that's what that's the tag she uses in chat. She's a moderator on the channel. She came over for a couple weeks at the beginning of January, and then my mother came over and visited after that. So just been very busy so far in January, so apologies for that. Also apologies for the people that enjoy the podcast on the SoundCloud, the CZ Productions SoundCloud. This podcast is not going to be going up on there because I'm currently working some stuff out for that. So apologies if you like the MP3 version. Just put the podcast on, do something else on YouTube, and just listen to it. Do it that way, or you can download it. There's plenty of sites out there that will convert videos to MP3, so you can do that as well. But let's get into it. How we're going to be doing things differently, actually, is when I edit these up, I try and put gameplay in the background for the games that I'm talking about, and I decided, you know what, why don't I just do that during the stream, so it's less editing and a higher probability that I'll be able to upload it. Because the main reason I don't upload these, or that I've done like 3 of these podcasts now that I haven't uploaded, is because of the editing involved. It takes a lot of work to, get the gameplay edited in the background, balance audio levels, make sure the gameplay is either like not copyrightable. So the good thing is that all of the games save one I've actually played on the channel, so I can use my own gameplay. So that's how we're going to be doing things differently here, if you are one of those weird people that likes to watch. So, first game we're going to be talking about, for my game of the year, let me just put myself over myself, is Dragon Ball FighterZ. So, While I don't play fighting games a ton on the channel, I'm a big fan of fighting games, actually. I really like them. And really the last fighting game that I was really into was Street Fighter 4. The original version. I didn't play the Super Ultra Arcade Max editions of Street Fighter 4. I just played the OG original Street Fighter 4 on the Xbox 360, and I absolutely loved the hell out of that game. I played the online a ton. Obviously, whenever a Mortal Kombat game comes out, I play it a bit, usually just the story mode, but Dragon Ball FighterZ came out at the very beginning of the year, like in January, I believe, and man, this game just started the year off fantastic. You can see, you know, just on screen, the aesthetic of the game is fantastic. It looks like something straight out of the anime. And that's something that's really hard to do, especially like for anime video games. I know not a lot of my viewers out there watch anime or play anime games, but let me tell you, you pick up like a Dragon Ball fighting game previously, whether it's Budokai or Xenoverse or whatever, and the games, they look nothing like the source material. They look nothing like the anime. Let's try and fast forward this to get to some actual fighting gameplay. Zach. Okay, there we go. And while I wasn't the best at Dragon Ball FighterZ, like I wasn't a fantastic player or anything like that, the game was still very fun. Not only because of the aesthetic, the sound design was phenomenal, the actual combat and the juggling mechanics were some of the most accessible I've found. I mean, Street Fighter, the interesting thing about Street Fighter is it's not really a combo heavy game. It's very much a footsies game, which if you don't play fighting games, you probably don't know what that means. It means it's a very, you know, you're looking for an opening, and it's all about spacing, and you're just trying to jab them to death, basically. Whereas this game, as you can see, tons and tons of juggling, in the air combos, trying to get those mix-ups, and all sorts of stuff. And it's very fun. It's very entertaining to play, and just started the year off really strong. I really liked it. For a long time, actually, it was my game of the year. I was like, there's no way anything's gonna beat this. And looking at my Steam, I put in 44 hours to the game, which for me is a lot of hours into a game, especially a fighting game. So really enjoyed Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I thought it started the year off very well. And these games aren't really ordered in any specific, you know, numbering. I'm not saying this is my third best or anything like that. So don't think that this is my lowest. It's just hard to compare a lot of these games because they're all so different. So let's move on to the next game that I want to talk about, and that's Spider-Man. Spider-Man, it's a good game. It was a very good game. The thing that I thought was really remarkable about Spider-Man is how they just throw you into a Peter Parker that's been Spider-Man for several years. And by the way, I'm not going to spoil anything for any of these games. The gameplay won't spoil anything either. Let me put me over me once again. But I thought the remarkable thing was they just know, right? They're like, okay, you know Spider-Man's origin. You don't need to know this or that or about how he became Spider-Man. This is the Peter Parker of this universe. And, you know, this is the opening of the game. You can see already it's telling you, yeah, he's Spider-Man. He was already with MJ. You know, he was already lost Uncle Ben. And they just start you right off. The very beginning of the game introduces you to the swinging mechanics. And that classic, like, orchestral Marvel and Spider-Man music swells up as you're swinging through, and the swinging itself is definitely the highlight of the game. The combat is okay. It's your standard like Arkham combat with a little bit of a flair, but overall the combat, nothing too interesting there, whereas the movement mechanics of the game are really what make it shine. For me, this game, it was a solid like 8. maybe even 8.5. Very good video game. And I loved so much. There were several times where I just swing around the city, you know, and it's one of those games that it didn't upset me. You know, I believe it does have a fast travel system, but I just never used it. It's not like a game that we'll be talking about later, Red Dead, where your movement and traversing the world is a hassle. It's not like that at all. You want to traverse the world. You want to move around. You want to web zip, and how it cleverly unlocks more and more abilities, whether that is getting a boost, a large boost that's really badass looking, when you properly web zip and then jump from that platform, to just properly gaining momentum by utilizing the dive feature, diving as low as you can above, you know, the streets of New York and then swinging away. Very satisfying. The storyline itself is interesting. It does a lot of stuff we've seen in the movies. There isn't anything particularly there that really blows your mind, but it does it all very well, and it's one of the games that got me to choke up. It got me to cry. I cried on stream about twice. So while it's not necessarily hard to make me cry, I'm a giant baby man. I'm actually not that giant at all. I'm a fairly small guy, but I'm a giant baby. As most people probably know, I get very emotional in movies, anime, games. A lot of my reactions to stuff, people say are overreactions, which is a fair assessment. I'm just kind of an emotional guy. My hair is annoying me. But yeah, it made me cry a couple times. I think that the way that they utilize one of the characters is, even though you know what's coming with that character, you know who they turn into eventually, it's very, very well done, and it does a great job of building that bond with the character beforehand. And I don't want to talk about the character. If you've played the game or seen the game, you know exactly what character I'm talking about. But they do, you know, just a fantastic job of building up this character, building up your relationship with them, and then when stuff happens and developments happen with that character, it does hit you in the feels. Even though you know it's coming from 10 million miles away, it still hits you in the feels, and that says a lot about, you know, the dialogue and the rapport that you build with them. It takes a very well-written narrative in order to establish those types of feelings when you know ultimately that thing is coming up. And they pulled it off very well, in my opinion. I thought that the main thing that the game could have done better, though, you know, just when they make Spider-Man 2, which is an inevitability, it's most certainly gonna happen, the number one thing they could have done better is those side missions. There's really only one side mission that really matters at all, and actually has like its own storyline and its own bad guy and boss. Everything else is kind of just there, and it kind of gives me like Far Cry vibes. And Far Cry 5 is a game that came out this year. I just didn't really like it. But my main issue with the Far Cry games is that there's just so much shit like tacked on. You know, you see the same thing in Assassin's Creed. It's a lot of those Ubisoft titles where it's just so much tacked on shit just to add content, and I'm not a fan of that. But there's a lot of that stuff in this game, like, ooh, collect all these backpacks, or collect all these, do all these trials, and it's just like, that's not for me. I'm not a fan of that type of shit in games, and I would rather you just make a good video game. You know, just give me that narrative that Spider-Man has, and I will be happy, and I will pay the money for it. It's not like you're not getting your money's worth, you know. It's like a 12-hour long movie. The story was pretty long. So I really enjoyed the game, though. It's just, I'd like to see those side missions fixed, make them actually worth doing. Give them a bit more of a story than, oh, this person was like kidnapped and you gotta find this location in this picture and or something like that. I don't even remember them. And this game did not come out that long ago, but I don't even remember them. That's how just throwaway they were. But all in all, it was a good video game. I really enjoyed it, especially the movement. I mean, that's just what makes this game what it is. The voice acting and stuff is also very good, but the movement is where the game shines, no doubt about it. Next game we're going to be talking about is God of War, which, surprisingly, actually won Game of the Year at the Game Awards, which I don't really think anybody really expected, to be honest with you. I think most people were like, yep, Red Dead Redemption 2 again for the 75th time. And this is a game that I think it deserved a Game of the Year. It's not my Game of the Year, but it's a very good video game. It does suffer from some issues, but let me first talk about my pros of God of War. This is another game that I streamed. Did not stream my initial playthrough of the game, but I did stream my second playthrough of the game on the hardest difficulty. And I would say this game does a fantastic job of bringing in new people. There's a lot of people, you know, that had 360s that now have PS4s. And this game did a fantastic job of saying, listen, if you've never played a God of War game, that's cool. You can play this. It's very different. You'll be, you know, able to learn it and keep up with the storyline just fine. But if you have played the previous games, you're gonna have a lot of little nuggets, you know? And I thought that was a genius way of doing things. I mean, even just what you're seeing on screen now with him looking at his bandages, you know, and that are covering up his scars from the chains. Just stuff like that where, like, sure, you may not pick up on it if you haven't played the previous games, but if you have, there's that lore there, there's that previous mythology. And seeing Papa Kratos, okay, Daddy Kratos, whatever you want to call him, seeing an older, much more calm version of Kratos is something that's a little bit eerie at first. It's a little bit strange, because Kratos, I played God of War 2 and God of War 3, and then I played the games originally on the PlayStation Portable, which I believe was Chains of Olympus. So I played a few of the previous God of War games, and what I would say is that, okay, let's get a little more forward in the actual like gameplay department, Zach. But what I would say is that Kratos didn't have a lot of depth. You know, he went through a lot of shit, don't get me wrong, in the previous games, but at the end of the day, Kratos in previous God of War games was very angry man that just through sheer willpower is going to murder everyone that has ever done him wrong, and a lot of people that didn't even do him wrong. He just fucking murders everything, and it's badass, especially God of War 3, where you are killing like every single Greek god imaginable. I mean, the game opens up and you're beating Poseidon's ass, and that shit's super fucking awesome, don't get me wrong, but the actual like character development is almost non-existent in those games. Kratos is just badass bald man, and he's just gonna fucking kill shit. And it's good as like a hack and slash game, but this game really adds something different. It sort of makes it more into a game along the vein of like The Last of Us, even, where it's really a character piece, and there's a lot of, you know, progression of Kratos' character, and they really, I don't want to spoil anything for the game, but they really give him a lot more layers, and there's a lot more feels in this game. And there's one section in particular that made me, okay, there's two sections in particular that made me bawl like a baby in this game. And the best thing I can say about God of War, the reboot, I don't even know what to call it, God of War 4, whatever. I think the best thing that I can say about this game is that it really, really ends fantastically and makes you want the next one. You actually get upset. I was watching Angry Joe's top 10 games of the year video, and he said it really well. It actually kind of makes you pissed off when the game ends because you want more, and it ends on such a cliffhanger, and you're like, I just want more of this video game. I want to see where it goes. And so if it was just like that story shit, you know, then this game would easily be like a 10 out of 10 for me. Unfortunately, it's not, though. I think this game is also an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, and let me give some reasons for it, just because I could say the stuff that I want them to improve upon for the next time. Number one, they really need to fix is the bosses. They reuse the same enemies for bosses over and over throughout the game, to the point where there's actually only like 3 boss fights in the entire game that are actually like unique. And sure, I knew it wasn't going to be like God of War 3, where it's just boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, and you're fighting, you know, gods. You know, I knew it wasn't going to be like that. I knew they weren't just going to throw you into this mythology and be like, okay, now kill all the gods here. Like, I knew they would have to build up to that point, just like they did with previous games, but the fact that there's more monsters you can do, man. There's a lot of monsters and cool shit that you can do, but they reuse the same enemies way too much in this game, and it's a little bit discouraging when, you know, you hear ho oh ho. Soundtrack, by the way, of this game is amazing, but you hear ho oh ho, and, you know, screens fucking shaking from giant footsteps. You're like, oh shit. What's it gonna be? And then it's the same enemy you fought like 8 times already, but he's just a different color. And it's like, oh, he's ice, so you gotta use fire against him. It's like, oh, come on, dude. Like, oh, now you're fighting an ice one and a fire one at the same time. It's like, ugh, it's just garbage. Another thing that I would say is they don't have enough finishers in the game. I know that's sort of a minor gripe, but the finishers are like a staple of the God of War series, you know, all of those amazing finishing moves that you can do that are ridiculously brutal and awesome, and they're very limited in this game. There's only like 1 or maybe 2 for each enemy type, so that's a little bit discouraging. As well, issues I wasn't a fan of the whole open world-ish design. I really didn't like that. A lot of the side quests fell very short, and they don't impact the storyline whatsoever. So sort of the same issue I had with Spider-Man, as like just a bunch of these little like side quests that are inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. The only things that were actually interesting were the fights with the Valkyries, which are very difficult, especially on the hardest mode. There were some that took me over 50 deaths. No joke. I think I died over 75 times to one of the Valkyries on the hardest difficulty. Just ridiculously hard. But the issue with the Valkyries is that while it's a really cool idea, almost all of them are very similar. Very similar. They may have like 1 or 2 different moves, but all in all, very similar boss fights, and that's a little bit upsetting. And the fact that you have to go through these really, really annoying trials in order to get one of them, it was just too much stuff locked behind busy work for me personally. I would have much rather just them stick to the story and just have the story be the game, but I know that they're trying to give people more content so they feel more validated and justified in their $60 purchase of a single player only title. Sure, whatever. I'm just not a fan of it personally. And also, I wasn't a fan of the tacked on RPG mechanics of, oh, you have this armor level and this skill and this weapon level and insert this gem to get this. Wasn't really a fan of that. I personally prefer just unlocking new combos and not having to socket them into a gem slot. But yeah, all in all, the voice acting, the soundtrack, the graphics, everything is just phenomenal on the game. I just feel that it falters a little bit in those categories of like the side content. I think it's really where it ends up faltering, and you know, repetitive boss design as well. It's just a little bit discouraging, but all in all, fantastic game. I can easily see why some people have it as their game of the year, because the story is just that good. It's sort of like a Last of Us thing, where even though the gameplay itself is not very good, or nothing groundbreaking at least, the storyline more than makes up for it. So definitely understand why people love it so much. Next was the game I really did think this was going to be my game of the year. I did not foresee any game surpassing Detroit Become Human for me. And I know there's a lot of talk about, well, is Detroit Become Human really a video game? Is it even, can you even put it in, you know, to the category of like video games of the year? I mean, there's not a lot of interactivity to it. And yes, absolutely, it's a video game. It is, without a doubt. This game, it does something that I've wanted to see for so long, which is your choices actually change shit. You know, you play any of the Telltale games, whether it's Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, doesn't matter. They all have this illusion of choice, right? And I'm gonna slightly spoil season 1 of The Walking Dead. Okay, if you have not played or seen somebody play season 1 of Telltale's The Walking Dead, I'm gonna spoil it here for you. But you make all these decisions in season 1 of The Walking Dead, you know, and you're thinking it's gonna shape the ending in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the game, Lee dies. It doesn't matter what you have done. Lee fucking dies. Okay? And there's no changing that outcome at all. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter any of your choices. He dies. And all of the Telltale games are like that. They're all like, no matter what you do, this shit's gonna happen. And it may make you feel like you had a choice or a play in the matter, but you didn't. Because this shit's gonna happen, whether you like it or not. And that's a really big issue for me in those games. And it's why I ultimately stopped playing Telltale games, is because I realized my choices don't actually fucking matter. It doesn't matter what breakdown they show me. It doesn't matter at all. Because at the end of the day, the game is the exact same for everybody. You know? And while I may save this person initially, they're probably just going to die later if they were supposed to die. And either way, these people are going to die no matter what. Detroit Become Human, it takes that same game design, you know, where it's mostly just walking around and talking to people and decision making via the 4 button prompts. But it does what I've always wanted, which is actually have branching narratives. I played one game where almost everybody lived. Almost everybody lived. Only one person died on my initial playthrough. And I was like, okay, that's probably how it goes. I played the second game, and I had a goal in the second game. My goal was to forge my own narrative, okay? My own narrative was this. I wanted all of the robots to die. I didn't want any robot left living, okay? Because I hated the idea of robots gaining sentience. It's just something that freaks me out, just as a scientist and a human being in general. That type of shit freaks me out. So I wanted all of the robots to totally get iced, and I wanted all of the human characters to live. And the fact that I could play through the game and via my decisions get, 1, a completely different outcome than my first initial playthrough, and 2, get everything to happen that I wanted to. I got all of the robots iced out of their minds. I had all of the main character robots iced out of their minds. The fact that I could do that and give myself my own ideal Detroit Become Human world is something that I have honestly never seen in a video game, ever. Like, I've wanted it so much, and I've gotten so close to it in games like Mass Effect, where I decide, like, okay, I want this person to live, this person to die, and I can reconstruct that. But the fact that I can completely form my own world inside this very narratively driven game, it just kind of blew my mind that it was possible to do. And because of that, this game was going to be my game of the year. I replayed this game like 4 times, and every single time I had different outcomes. this game is not afraid of locking you out of like 60% of the content. It does not give a shit. You can only play like 30% of the game if you make fucked up decisions from the very beginning of the game. Very minor spoiler for the very beginning of the game. There is a character that is a maid, and there is a situation where you can either become a deviant and intervene, or you can do nothing. 99% of people out there, they intervene, right? Because it's a fucked up situation. They want to stop it. They want to play as this character. If you intervene, you can do several different things to intervene, and all of those have different outcomes. And if you do, you become a deviant, and then you play as that character, and it's solid. That character's gameplay is a solid at least 25% of the game. Realistically, probably about 30 or 33% of the game. If you decide not to not intervene at all, you never become a deviant. You just become a regular made robot, and you are now locked out of 33% of the game. You do not come back later to play as that character at all. That character is just a regular robot now. There's nothing left for you to do with that character. That blows my mind that they had the brass balls to pitch that. Just like, yeah, you know what? Let's just permanently lock people out of 33% of our video game if they fuck up. Or hey, you know what? If you try and save this person and you mess up your button prompts, let's just have your character die. What is up with my hair? Do you guys see my hair in this video? Look at that hair. What is that? That's a bedhead if I've ever seen it. Zach, pull yourself together. You're in shambles. You look like shit. Anyway, it blows my mind that you can get locked out of so much of this game just by making certain decisions. And while tons of people will argue, you know, that it's not a video game because there isn't all this interactivity or this or that, I would say it's absolutely a video game. I don't know what the fuck the Game Awards were doing when they gave Red Dead Redemption 2 Best Narrative, when this game is easily the best narrative of 2018. This game is only narrative. That's all it is story. And the story, while nothing crazy like blowing your mind innovation, it's done so well, and the motion capture is done so well, and the graphics, by the way, you talk about God of War graphics, this game's graphics are at least twice as good. This game easily has the best graphics I've ever seen, and I'm a PC fanboy. I have my $2,000 PC, and I love to crank up the graphics, but there's nothing on PC that compares to the graphics in this game. I mean, maybe Star Citizen, but this game is truly impressive when it comes to the graphics. Voice acting's phenomenal. Characters are just very interesting. I liked almost all of them. The twists and turns in the game felt natural. They didn't feel forced, and how your choices ultimately impact the storyline was something that I found truly impressive. And a marvel of technical engineering. You know, the fact that they can have all of these branching storylines, and if you look at the flowcharts, you'll see all of those branching storylines. It's crazy to me. It really is, you know? And in terms of gripes of the game, I've talked about gripes of previous games. I don't want to suck this game's dick too much. One of my gripes is that they try a little bit too hard to be like, no, this is a video game, because they have you interact with so much stuff. I mean, you can see it in the gameplay. It's like, oh, you want to lift this lid? Push up on the stick, and you're like, you want to put down the lid? Push down on the stick. It's like, you don't need to do that, right? It doesn't have to have all of that, like, interactivity with the fucking sticks and stuff. It doesn't have to have all of that. It's a little bit annoying at times where it's like, okay, I gotta fucking swivel my stick and fucking do all this shit. It's a little bit annoying, but I mean, that's honestly the only gripe I have with this game. That's it. I love Detroit Become Human. Yeah, and I thought for sure this was going to be my game of the year. But it ended up not being, and we'll get to that at the very end. What usurped? How do you guys say that? Usurped? What, usurped this game? I don't know how the hell you pronounce that. Anyway, let's get into the next game, which is probably the most fun that I've had. Definitely not like the best game of the year, but I've had so much fun playing this game, and that's Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Now, I won't lie or sugarcoat anything. I will be very honest with you guys. I'm a bit biased when it comes to Call of Duty. I love Call of Duty. I've been playing Call of Duty for well over a decade, actually. I've been playing this series since Call of Duty 3. And before that, I had dabbled in like Big Red 1 and stuff, but Call of Duty 3 was really my first major Call of Duty, and I loved it. And I've loved it ever since. And I'm not like a blind fanboy. There's some times where I'm just not a fan of it. Like, for example, was not a big fan of Infinite Warfare. The storyline was good, but the rest, not so much. I didn't even play World War II. I was not interested. I played the beta and I was like, this game is just not for me. I'm not digging it. But Black Ops 4, it's just a good shooter, man. There's no way around it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just a good shooter, you know? And I'm a simple man, you know? I love my competitive shooters, and this game, it just nails it. It nails it, and it has some issues, sure, but it's a game so nice, I've bought it twice. I bought it initially on PC, and then once the player base started dying, which was bound to happen, I picked it up for PlayStation as well, which I mostly play on now, just because there's more people playing the video game. But it's a very good game. There's not really a lot for me to say about it, other than I think, in my opinion, has the best battle royale mode that I've ever played. I think it's better than PUBG, Fortnite. I mean, they're very different, to be fair, but I think it's better than PUBG, Fortnite, all these small baby shitter battle royale games. It's just a really good battle royale, which is mainly what I play, but the multiplayer is also very good. The zombies, I'm not a big zombies guy, but I have probably about 15 hours in the zombies, which is a lot for me. I've enjoyed the zombies quite a bit. It's just, there's not really a lot to say about it, right? In my opinion. Call of Duty is just one of those games where you either like it or you hate it, right? And I know a lot of people out there hate it because it's like the cool thing to hate. You know, it's sort of like Minecraft and in terms of like, oh, it's popular, let's hate on it, or Fortnite, oh, it's popular, let's hate on it. It's sort of like that in the same vein, but it's just a good shooter. Just a solid shooter. I've had a lot of fun. I've played with a few of my subscribers, and we've had a lot of fun. It's just a good game. You know, very simple. Is what it is. Entertaining game. Not a lot to say. Let's get into the controversial shit, though. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's not. At all. In any way, shape, or form. In my Game of the Year list of 2018. So why am I talking about it? I'm talking about... I just have to rant about Red Dead Redemption 2 because so many people are just like sucking this game's dick. The Game Awards gave it like 75 awards, and this game isn't that good, guys. It's not that good. I'm sorry, it's just not. Like, if you objectively analyze this game, just objectively, take all feelings out, the controls are garbage. There's no way around it. The controls are garbage. The movement of, you know, traversing the world, so boring. It's so boring and slow. Riding your horse around, it's just so slow. Their fast travel mechanics are awful, so you really have to ride around in your horse most of the time unless you invest a bunch of fucking money in your camp, and then you can fast travel, but only from Arthur's cabin. It's just so much shit. I don't know why everyone's ranting and raving about this game. The controls are terrible. The shooting mechanics are super lazy. The game aims for you. Like, it just aims for you. It rides your horse for you. It does everything for you. It plays itself. It's barely a video game. You want to talk about Detroit barely being a video game. This is barely a video game, okay? Now, sure, are the graphics impressive? Yes, but there's games with better graphics. God of War has better graphics than this. Detroit has much better graphics than this. Those are just facts, okay? So the graphics, they're good. The gameplay's on right now. This is running on a PS4 Pro. As good looking as the game can get, 1080p, but it's not that. Go back and look at the Detroit gameplay, and then look at this. It's not as good. Or the God of War gameplay, it's not as good. The facial animations are very well done, not as good as Detroit. Arguably on par, if not a little bit worse, with God of War. The game is just so dated, and I get it if you're into the storyline, but for me, when I found out this was a prequel to Red Dead Redemption, that kind of sort of instantly threw me off, because I was like, I already know how this game ends. You know what I mean? I already know exactly how this game is going to end. So what's the point in even playing it? And this is one of the this is the only game actually really on this list that I never got around to beating. I could not beat this game. I'm still on like chapter 3. The game is so long. It's full of so much busy work and boringness. And that's how I can summarize my thoughts on Red Dead Redemption 2, is that it's boring. It's just boring. Every single mission is the same, and it's the same design, and I'm happy that people are finally calling it out. I mean, I said this the very first, this is a 7-hour stream. The gameplay in the background was 7 hours, almost 8 hours of my initial impressions of the game from the very beginning, and I said it the moment that I started playing it, and I'm happy that people are finally starting to say it. This game's just boring, and it just feels so dated. All of the missions are the same. You go to point A, okay, to meet up with who cares. You get on your horse. You ride to point B, which is anywhere from 5 to, not even being dramatic, sometimes 15 to 20 minutes of riding on your horse just to get to point B. Why did the quest not just start at point B? You may be thinking. I don't know. I'm thinking the same thing. Okay? And that is 90% of the game right there, is traveling on horse while talking to somebody. That is like the whole game. Every single mission is the same. Get on horse with other people, talk to them for the bulk of the mission while riding your horse. You can't ride your horse too fast though, because you can't pass them. You gotta ride in unison, so a nice little jog, a brisk trot, if you will. And you just fucking ride on your horse talking. Shit hits the fan. You kill some people, which is very easy because the game auto aims for you. There's not really any challenge whatsoever. It aims for you. All you gotta do is pull the button to shoot. You guys talk some more. You likely ride on your horse and talk some more, and then that's it. And it's just the same design over and over every mission, man. And I didn't really have a big problem with it in GTA 5. GTA 5 does the same thing, right? But in GTA 5, you're driving a car, you're driving a fucking Ferrari at 150 to 200 miles per hour, and you're swerving in and out of traffic, and it's a lot more entertaining than galloping on a horse, right? At 10 miles per hour. It's just, the sound design is good. In the game, the graphics are good. The attention to detail is truly something that deserves mentioning. The animations are fantastic, but they also try and shoehorn in these survival elements where you need to eat and drink and like sleep in order to maintain your character, and you have to watch your diet or else you'll put on weight, and your hair grows realistically, and it's like none of these things are what people wanted out of Red Dead Redemption 2. When you play Red Dead Redemption 1, which I love Red Dead Redemption 1, by the way, I love that game. When I played that, I wasn't like, you know what this needs? It needs survival elements. I want to have to eat and drink. No, I didn't want that. I just wanted a cool cowboy storyline. That's it. Cool cowboy storyline. Just in this game, what do I want? I just want to be a cool cowboy. I want to be a bad dude, right? I want to be an outlaw. And somehow they just managed to make it so boring. How can you make a train robbery as a cowboy boring? I don't know, but they did it. They managed to make a fucking train robbery as a cowboy boring. The bank robberies are boring. It's just, ugh. Red Dead Redemption 2, easily the most overrated game, possibly of all time. I will say it. Possibly of all time. This game is so overrated. I don't know why people have been sucking this game's dick so hard. It's okay. It's an okay video game. It's just not even close to other games that came out this year, though, that are much better, that should have won more awards. Like, hello? Best narrative? Red Dead Redemption 2 for best narrative. Really? When so many of the missions are filler and boring as hell, you're gonna give it best narrative? What? The only good missions are the missions at the very end of the chapters. Like, I'm only on chapter 3. Who knows? Maybe it gets great in chapter 4. But I'm a solid 20 hours in, at least 20 hours in to the game. And I'm just sitting here like, the only good missions are at the very end of the chapter when shit goes down and then you guys just gotta move bases again. Like, that's the only time that cool shit happens. I've said all I can about Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, it's not on my list. It's nowhere in my top 10 games of the year. Easily one of the most overrated video games of all time. Easily. Rockstar just needs to update their game design. That's really what it comes down to, is they do the same shit and they make the same game every time. And if you're the person that likes that, and you like Rockstar's game design and their repetitiveness, and who knows, maybe you're even a madman that enjoys their horrible control scheme. I don't know. I guess it's a possibility. I guess there's probably at least one human being out there that likes their control scheme. Why don't they just do a normal control scheme like every other person out there? God knows. Who knows? Why can't you customize your controls? I don't know. Why can't I make sprint left stick like every other video game? I don't know. Makes no sense to me. I don't get it. But I guess if you're one of those people that really likes that shit, then it makes sense why you like this game. Now I want to talk about the worst game of 2018. I know I just ragged on Red Dead Redemption. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is nowhere near the worst game of 2018. It's still a decent game. I'd give it a solid 5 out of 10. It's a decent game. I'd play it if there's no other video games out there, or if it's compared with this game, I would play it every single day. Worst game of the year 2018 is easily, by far, Fallout 76. Talk about a disappointment. Talk about just what the hell are you doing? Oh, let me put the gameplay on so you can see how bad this game is. I titled this stream, "Is this game really that bad?" Yeah, yes it was. It's so bad. So, I'm a huge fan of Fallout. I don't think that's a secret at all, actually. I am a massive Fallout fan. And, talk about a disappointing, just slap to the dick of a video game. This game is horrible. I cannot... I try and say the positives before I talk about games. The positive to this game is that there's some really interesting enemy design and some cool guns. Now let's get on to everything else about the game. The negatives, which is just everything. The combat is horrible. I don't know how they managed to have Fallout 4, which, say what you will about Fallout 4, definitely one of the weaker games in the Fallout franchise. But the one good thing that this game had, the one and only good thing that Fallout 4 had, was the combat. The combat was good in Fallout 4. It was the best in the entire series, at least for the modern games, between 3 and New Vegas. It was the best. It felt good, and they just butchered it. They just butchered it. They made everything so bullet spongy in this game. Everything. Legitimately everything. Whereas you play in Fallout 4, you have a 10mm pistol, right? You get a sneak attack critical. Even on the hard difficulty modes, you're gonna 2 or 3 shot somebody, especially if you're getting headshots. Maybe even 1-shot them. In this game, everything. Everything. It could be just a fucking rad roach. I'm not even making this up. A rad roach will take 3 or 4 shots. Like, what are you thinking? This game is just so bad. The sound design is bad. There's no NPCs. So you think, okay, well, maybe they did shitty on the gameplay front, on the combat, but maybe they really improved in terms of the quests or the storylines. No, the quests are terrible, practically non-existent. Standard MMO, go kill these things. Quests, they're horrible. There's like no voice acting whatsoever except for audio logs that you find, that aren't that interesting, really at all. It butchers the Fallout lore, just absolutely butchers it. It makes no sense. If you take a look at Fallout lore, this game makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a terrible video game. There's practically nothing redeeming about this game, and all of the stuff that's went wrong with it is just icing on the cake. Like, I'm not even talking about how they promised canvas vags and then they gave shitty ones. I'm not even talking about how they accidentally doxed their own fucking customers. I'm not even talking about the fact that you can access the development room and now they're permanently banning players for accessing it. I'm not even talking about any of that. I'm just talking about the video game, and it's terrible. I'm not even being dramatic, and maybe it's because I'm such a Fallout fan that I can say this, but this is easily the most disappointing video game I've ever played in my life, and easily in my top 10 worst video games I've ever played. Like, people will ask me, like, what's your favorite game? But they'll also ask me, what's your least favorite game? What's the worst game you've ever played? And I think Fallout 76 is just going to be my go-to from now on. It is that bad. It is just a horrible, horrible video game. And I have never been more disappointed. And it's just one of those things that makes you feel bad, especially if you're a Fallout fan like me. I think most people by now, if you're subbed to me or if you watch my content, you've probably seen my Fallout 4 reaction where I cry like a little baby because I'm so excited. I love the Fallout franchise. It's gotten me through, or at least helped to get me through a lot of the terrible moments of my life. I've had, some moments in my life that really weren't ideal, we'll say. And no matter how rough things got, I knew I could turn to the Fallout franchise as my escape. And that's really what the Fallout franchise always was for me. It was an escape from reality. So no matter how harsh my reality was, I could escape to, sure, a bit of a dim and desolate world. But the thing about Fallout is that while you play New Vegas and it's just barren, right? There's still humor. There's still fantastic characters that are really entertaining. And it did a great job when I was growing up of making me feel like, listen, if shit goes wrong, then there's always a bright side, you know? And it's the reason why I make such dark jokes, and it's the reason why I love dark humor, and the reason that I always try and use jokes in order to, you know, bring a little bit of levity to dark situations, because Fallout did a great job of showing me that even though shit can be terrible, and, you know, 80% of the population could be dead because of fucking nuclear bombs and man's, you know, pursuit of power and greed and rivalry can throw the world into despair, you can still make some jokes. You know, everything doesn't have to be so drab. And Fallout 4, while it had its issues, it did still have its charm, and I put, you know, 200 hours in Fallout 4. This game, this sounds like I'm making such a sad speech because of the music in the background, but this game, it just let me down so much, and it just made me so sad. It really did. It wasn't even like one of those things where I was laughing because it was bad. It was just me seeing this franchise that I have loved and that has been so great to me, and kind of just having to say my goodbyes to it. Like, this game fully eliminated any hope that I had for Bethesda making a good Fallout game. Like, to me, Fallout is dead now. It is dead. And, it sucks, dude. It's very sad. It is very sad, but... let's move on to the game of the year, everybody, and get happy about it, because this is a game that I recently started playing, actually. It came out at the very beginning of 2018. Passed over me, right? Because it wasn't initially on PC. So I passed over it. I had never played a game in the franchise, so I wasn't really, you know, expecting anything from it. I thought it looked like a decent little game, though. And, started playing it about a month ago. Really was not a fan of it, actually. Not a big fan of it when I initially played it, but came back to it. Actually, I started playing about 2 months ago. Came back to it about a month ago. And just fell in love. It all clicked for me. And that game, my game of the year for 2018, is Monster Hunter World. And I actually have not streamed this game, so this is the only gameplay I'm using of somebody else. This is from Boss Fight Database. It's all of the monster intros for the game. But Monster Hunter World, like I said, I never played a Monster Hunter game. To me, the Monster Hunter games always looked shitty because they were all on these like portables, and they looked like poo poo doo doo, and the combat looked unresponsive. That's the word I'm looking for. Combat looked unresponsive, and it just looked boring. But then I saw the E3 trailer for Monster Hunter World, and I was like, hey, that game looks pretty good. I don't really know anything about Monster Hunter, but looks pretty good. But it came out on console, and I wasn't really interested. And then picked it up for PC, and then just never really played it. Waifu really wanted to play it, so we both picked it up. And I tried it initially, and I was like, I'm really not a fan of this game. I wasn't digging it because, in my opinion, I was like, these boss fights take like 50 years. Like, to me, I was so used to like Dark Souls, and this game definitely takes a lot of things from Dark Souls, don't get me wrong. The combat is very similar to Dark Souls, but in Dark Souls, you die fast, but so does basically everything else. Like, even the bosses, you can fuck up real quick. You know, a long boss fight in Dark Souls is like a few minutes. In this game, a long boss fight is like a fucking hour. I'm not even being dramatic with you. There are boss fights that will take you close to an hour, and I was like, this game sucks dick. This game sucks dick. It doesn't show you enemy health bars, and you have no idea how much damage you're doing. You're just fucking swinging away at this thing until it eventually keels over, and they only give you 3 lives to fight this thing before it's mission failure. Meanwhile, you're hacking away at this thing for 30 minutes, and he fucking, you know, one-shots you. Some of these monsters will one-shot you, and you have like only 3 lives, and you have to kill this thing. And then it clicked for me, and I was like, wait, that's the whole point of the game. The whole point of the game is that you're just this little fucking human. You ain't shit. Like, you're a fucking human, and we may be the apex predators in our world, but let me tell you, humans aren't fucking shit compared to a giant fire-breathing T-Rex, okay? That is the size of you know, large home. I don't fucking know. It's a fucking T-Rex that breathes fire, dude. If that's not sick, I don't know what is. And it's insane. Like, the scope that a lot of these monsters have. I mean, there's one, the main monster of the game is an elder dragon named Zora Magdaros. And this fucking dude is so huge that you have an entire team of guys running around just smacking this guy in his, like, weak points, and he doesn't even give a shit, and he's busting through fucking walls and shit, and you have to drop giant fucking stalactites to do any damage, and you're just hitting him with a barrage of cannon fire and shooting ballista at this guy, and he doesn't even give a flying fuck. Not to mention, he's made out of, like, fucking magma, and he's shooting lava all over the place. It's crazy, man, and you're seeing from the cutscenes here, like, these monsters are huge, and you're just like a regular little ant to some of these guys. You're a little ant to some of these dudes, and it's just about having better movement than them, utilizing your environment by accessing, you know, traps and dropping boulders on them, and utilizing slopes so that you can get a height advantage and jump on top of them, and it just does something so interesting for me that it just clicked, and I really started to dig the game. And then whenever I'd have like a hard boss fight, I would start to do research, because as you know, are fighting these monsters, you can collect stuff like their footprints or, you know, their mucus, which sounds pretty gross, and it is pretty gross, to learn, and then you can talk to your research team and they'll tell you more information about them. And utilizing that, you can find out their weak points, and you can find out what status effects you can use if they're weak to poison, or what elements to use if they're weak to fire. And utilizing that information, you can kind of plan accordingly before your hunt. And then you can beat the shit out of this dude. And it is just so satisfying. And I'm not really a fan of grindy games. I'm really not. Like, none of these games, you know, that I've mentioned have been grindy games, because I'm not really a fan of that style of game. But if you give me shit that looks as sick as some of the armor and weapons in this game, you bet your dick I'm gonna grind for that shit. Okay, some of the armor is so sick in Monster Hunter that okay, there's an enemy called the Rathalos. It is a giant dragon, basically. It's just a big ass dragon. And this guy is hard as fuck when you're first starting out. He's hard as fuck. And I killed this man like 25 times in order to get all of the shit to make his armor, because it looked so sick. It looked like some fucking dragon ninja samurai dude. and I didn't even give a shit. I had a great time doing it. And I have put in about 80 hours in 2 weeks into this game. That's a lot of time. A lot of that time is AFK, to be fair. I have left it on when I was heading to the store and shit. But nonetheless, a lot of hours have been put into this video game, and honestly, I still have a ton of shit to do. But it is so fun, man. And it just does everything well. Like, everything that it does, it's good. There's not really any way around it. Like, I can't really think of anything other than the story. The story is lackluster. But you're not playing this game for the story. But it is still a negative. The story is fairly lackluster. By the way, this is the giant fucking Elder Dragon, Zora Magros. The thing is huge! It's gigantic! But the game is just, it's very fun. If you're the type of person that likes grindy stuff, this game does what a lot of people wish games like Destiny did, or World of Warcraft had better, which is the end game. This Monster Hunter World does end game better than most games I have seen. It does end game fantastically well, where even though you're fighting the same monsters, they do interesting like power-up variations of them, and you're always working to get that new like sick-ass gear set. You're always looking to make your guy just look badass, man. You're literally ripping off these fucking horns off of these monsters and just putting it on your fucking shoulders. Like, yeah, this looks fucking sick. And it's amazing. It is so cool. Me personally, I started off the game role-playing as Guts from Berserk. I used a great sword, made him, and it's just super fun, dude. It is super fun. Not to mention, okay, that while the combat is sort of Dark Souls-y for some of the weapon types, there's 14 different weapon types, and about a solid 11 of them, maybe 10, are entirely unique. You know, they have some that are like the light bow gun and the heavy bow gun. They're basically like kind of like the same thing. So I really only count that as one. Or they're like, hey, the lance and the gun lance. They're technically two different, but they're sort of similar to me. But there's 14 different really, weapon types. And every weapon type has its own combos and its own mechanics. And it's not just like slight variations. They're completely different, okay? I started off using the Great Sword. It's a giant ass fucking sword, like you might think. It's pretty slow, but it does by far the most damage per hit out of any of the weapons. And while it's slow, it's very rewarding. It's very dodge and hit and run like dependent. So you have to be very good with learning enemy movesets, dodging, hitting, and falling back. But it's super fun. Then I pick up the bow because I'm like, I'll try a ranged weapon. The bow plays completely differently, obviously, but it's more about, it has this perfect like range where you do ideal damage. You're very mobile, you have a lot of dashes. It has this interesting mechanic where every consecutive shot you shoot from the bow, you add an additional arrow. So your first shot, 1 arrow, second shot, 2 arrows, third shot, 3 arrows. It also has a quick shot where you can shoot horizontally several arrows depending on your charge. So depending on if your next shot is going to be a 2 arrow or a 3 arrow, it does more damage and it shoots more shots if it's horizontal. It also has combos similar to a weapon, which I find very interesting because most of the time ranged weapons and like Dark Souls and stuff like that, they don't have combos to them. So that's very interesting to me and I really like that. We're gonna restart this video. Don't worry, we're almost done with the podcast. So it has legit combos. You can shoot a fucking like giant sack of rocks into the air that then falls on the enemy and does like damage every tick as they have fucking rocks hitting them in the head. And if you put that on their head, if you aim it right, hit it on their head, it can knock them out. So then you can get combos while they're on the floor. It's just super satisfying. They have a fucking weeb blades, dual blades, which are 2 little daggers. Look fucking sick, and you can do all sorts of crazy shit. Enter a demon mode. You can do all sorts of fucking Attack on Titan shit where you dash off of a ledge and you spin like a fucking Beyblade on crack down like the back of a fucking monster, which gets insane when it's like a really big monster and you're just spinning down its side, slicing its spine open. Dude, if you haven't played this video game, just do yourself a favor and play it. Just play it, okay? There's so many different weapon types that I can guarantee you will find something that you like. And it's very hard to say that about a game, you know? But this is one of those games where I'm like very confident that practically anybody out there can find enjoyment in this. They have weapons that are easy to use, weapons that are hard to use, weapons that have tons of mechanics, weapons that have practically no mechanics. It's just so satisfying. And I love it. I love it. I've put 80 hours into this game, and I'm gonna easily put another 80 in. And for me, we were talking about Dragon Ball FighterZ, how I put 44 hours into that, and how that's a lot of time for me to put into a game. So that really does put it into perspective for you. 80 hours is a ton of time for me. And I just find myself playing this game all the time, or wanting to play this game, or having dreams about playing this game, and just, you know, killing that monster one more time to get one more scale so I can build that sick ass helmet, or killing that monster one more time to get one more horn so I can somehow jam it into my fucking blade and hit that same monster again, but now with his own like bones shaped into a fucking blade. It's just super cool, man. It's super cool. The enemies are varied, and a lot of their designs are very interesting. They have different move sets. It's just a great game. In terms of a negative, actually, though, now that I'm thinking about it, they really did advertise this game as like, you can play this co-op, play it with your friends. The co-op system is terrible in this game. It's god-awful. It's horrible. How it does co-op is that you can play with somebody, but not if they have not seen the cutscene. So if you're trying, like Waifu and I were trying to start the game together, right, and play missions together, but you have to see the cutscene for that mission before you can join someone else's game. And they also have to have seen the cutscene, because they're dumb about it. They don't want, like, they want your character to be in that cutscene, and they don't want you to like be in someone else's game, I guess, when they're seeing cutscenes. I don't know, but it leads to a very convoluted way of doing co-op, where you basically have to be a high level playing with a low level if you want to experience it with them, because you have to already have seen the shit. So you have to already have played that shit before you can join their shit. And all in all, the system is shit. It's very frustrating and annoying, but other than that, me personally, I find the game much more enjoyable to play solo. I think that's maybe just because I am a solo gamer, but how it does multiplayer is that the moment a second player joins the game, the monsters now have twice as much HP. As a result, in my opinion, that leads to the monsters feeling just so tanky, and you don't get better rewards either for fighting with somebody else. You actually get worse rewards because all of your money and stuff like that is split between the number of players. So as a result, the enemies start to feel a little overbearingly tanky, and it's just not as fun for me personally. And maybe that's because I'm a great sword user. So, you know, I like feeling like when I'm slashing a motherfucker, he's really feeling it. And when you add more people to that, it kind of just ruins that dynamic and makes you feel like you're not doing that much damage. But that's definitely a negative for me if you are trying to play, you know, just start a fresh-ass character with a friend or something like that, you're gonna have a bad time. It's just a really annoying system. But other than that, I mean, the game is great. It's amazing. I am completely sold into the Monster Hunter, like, world. I get it. I make dumb dad jokes when I don't even intend to. God damn it. But no, I'm completely sold to the Monster Hunter universe now. I'm very interested in playing future games, and I hope that they do continue, you know, to make these like AAA quality, because I know Monster Hunter games, they've been big for like well over a decade in Japan, and Japan loves the hell out of them, but I don't care about like some shitty little mobile Monster Hunter game. I want more of this. More AAA, you know, on consoles, on PC, Monster Hunter games. I really do, because this game is fantastic. And it does so many things that are very unique that that other games that I've played don't do. You know, like the sort of utilizing your environment is something that I have not seen in another game. Like Dark Souls doesn't do that. There's not like sequences in Dark Souls, you know, where you can attack some random toad and then that toad explodes with electricity and you can lead a monster into it. You know, there's nothing like that in Dark Souls. And it does the prepare ahead of time thing that the Witcher games do, especially Witcher 2, it does that, but I feel like it just does it better than the Witcher series did it as well. It's just a great game, guys. It's just a great game, and it came out of nowhere for me. Played it at the tail end of, technically I played it in January, to be honest with you. Actually, I initially played it in December, so it still counts. Still initially played it in December, really got into it in January, but it came out really early in the year, like in February of 2018, and just totally missed it. But goddamn, am I sad that I missed it, because it was super good. But that'll about round it up for me for my Game of the Year list of 2018. All in all, 2018, really strong year for games. There were tons of indie games that I didn't get a chance to play that were marvelous as well, apparently, like Dead Cells and Celeste. Unfortunately, like I said, I didn't get the chance to play those games, but I definitely will down the line. I'll just be a little bit late to the party. And also, can we just talk about how great of a year PlayStation had? God of War, Spider-Man, and Detroit. All three of those games, PlayStation exclusives. Xbox really needs to bring it next generation, because let me tell you, they just got their ass consistently and thoroughly handed to them by Sony. Like, they just got completely demolished. They have practically no exclusives at all. Like, I could not tell you a reason to buy an Xbox One. I couldn't. And that is very sad, especially as somebody that loved the original Xbox and played the hell out of the Xbox 360. It's sad, but it's true. Like, they just have nothing. So hopefully they'll really bring it next generation, but props to you, Sony. You've acquired some fantastic developers with, you know, Insomniac and, who made God of War? I don't remember who made God of War. Whoever did fantastic. And then also with David Cage making Detroit Become Human. I mean, they just had great games all around. Next year, they're going to be delivering as well, or this year, I guess, technically, with Last of Us 2 and several other games that are going to no doubt be fantastic. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And I may start doing CZ Productions podcasts again, I'm not sure. And I'll likely be doing them in this format because it's a lot easier for me. I don't have to edit it up and then re-upload it. I could just have the shit, so I don't have to edit in the gameplay and stuff, which takes a long time. I can just have it up here. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I'll see all of you in the next video or from stream already. Bye.